So for 20 years, the internet has given us a lot of wonderful things, but there's always been a fundamental issue, and that's an issue with trust, specifically with payments. And that can be summed up by Milton Friedman, Nobel Prize-winning economist. He said the one thing that's missing, but that'll soon be developed, is a reliable e-cash. So instead of being able to make a payment, an electronic payment, and they're traveling through a complicated set of intermediaries where there's a lot of risk and a lot of fees, being able to actually create a digital token that represents currency and transferring that on a peer-to-peer basis. So obviously, in 2008, there was an earthquake that went through the financial system, and a lot of banks became insolvent through the subprime problem. And because of that, the central banks around the world printed a lot of money. In fact, this is hyperinflation, a rapid increase in the supply of money. And so a lot of developers were constantly trying to figure out how to actually solve Milton Friedman's problem. And eventually the product was Bitcoin, and now I'm sure you've all seen it and heard it. But if you look at Bitcoin, now a lot of the news about Bitcoin is that it's a Ponzi scheme and all that sort of thing, but it really is a revolutionary new digital token that can be considered a currency, and I do believe it has intrinsic value because it is useful. And if you look at every single measure, it's growing. Transactions per day, the number of new addresses, in other words, people who are owning Bitcoins, the hash rate, which just means the processing power that's going into the network to keep it secure and to process those transactions, and then also a number of wallet users themselves. So Bitcoin definitely is growing as an alternative asset class, and people are looking towards it more and more as a hedge against inflation. So Bankymoon was founded 2 years ago to try and solve problems using Bitcoin and the blockchain. And the first thing that we tackled was the issue of electricity, and this slots in nicely with Sun Exchange, where utilities around the world are struggling to recover costs for the electricity that's consumed. Eskom is a clear case and example. So what's going on through Africa is a massive rollout with prepaid meters. But now that introduces a new kind of problem because a lot of people are unbanked. 80% of Africans are unbanked. And to buy prepaid electricity, it's expensive because you need to have vendors, and it's inconvenient. If you run out of electricity in the middle of the night, then you're stuck. You've got to wait for a vendor. So what we developed was the world's first Bitcoin prepaid vending solution, where you could send Bitcoin to the meter, and then it would convert that into a currency, calculate the tariff, and then actually load the required kilowatt hours onto the meter. Now, the use cases for this are really cool because you don't have to be in the country, if you like, to be able to buy the electricity. You can be anywhere in the world. So you can be a student studying abroad, and instead of phoning your mom and saying, "Mom, please send me some money, remittance, time," she can have Bitcoin sent to that meter directly. Another use case is for crowdfunding, and for, let's say, there's a needy African school in Africa. They can have a Bitcoin meter, and now crowdfunders with foreign donors from around the world can directly fund that meter without having to pay the remittance cost or give the money to an organization where the money is opaquely distributed, and there's a lot of costs and fees. And in fact, we have decided to actually go and do this. So what we did was we installed a meter in Emoweni Primary School in Soweto, and what we did was we presented live to MIT in Boston. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. It was pitch dark at the school, and I presented the presentation from the school to MIT in Boston, and a delegate from the conference actually sent a Bitcoin directly to the meter. It took a few seconds to get there. It was 7,500 Rand. That was a Bitcoin price, and 7,500 Rand was directly loaded onto that meter, and the lights went on. And it was quite a thrilling exercise. So we have now created a crowdfunding platform where you can now go and view these schools, and you can decide, pick your school, you can see the school, you can see photographs, you can see what that school needs, you can see how much electricity they need, what issues they have, and you can actually now send Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies to that meter. But now, as a commercial product, I'd like to introduce you to our Sandton mobile app. Now, the one thing that's missing in Bitcoin is how do you use it conveniently, and a lot of people say, how do you get it? How do you transact with it? Where do I spend my Bitcoins? So we now are creating what we think, and from what we've seen, the world's first consumer-friendly Bitcoin wallet. So what happens is you store your value in Bitcoin, but you transact in the local currency. Some of the features are there's a lot of merchant integration and contact integration. So the first thing is allowing you to see where you can go and spend your Bitcoin. So other Sandton merchants, and you'll see how we integrate with merchants. You can view them on a map. then if you want, and I'll show you how this works, it's like SnapScan. We intend being a SnapScan killer. You can go into the retailer, you can snap the QR code, and what we do as a service is we convert those bitcoins from the wallet into rands, and we pay the retailer, sending them a payment notification. And it's very easy to onboard these merchants. Also, we integrate with your contacts. So just like WhatsApp, as soon as you install WhatsApp, anybody who's in your contact book who has a Sendbe wallet, they appear, and you can select them, you can chat with them, maybe we'll kill WhatsApp, and you can also send money. So you can now go and send 100 Rand, and what will happen is immediately it'll send 100 Rands worth of Bitcoin to that friend of yours or whomever. You can buy electricity. So we've decided to incorporate the electrical component into this. So now you can put a meter into your phone, and what it'll do is it'll take the Bitcoins off your wallet, convert it into Rands, and pay the utility, pay the electricity, give you an STS token or load remotely. And we can do that with airtime as well. You can put a cell phone number and buy electricity. You can see your transactions that you've made. I don't know if you can see that from here. And this is what our retail version looks like. What happens is you can just log onto the site. Anybody can do this. Log onto Sendbe, add your ID, your proof of address, your bank account details, download the QR code, and stick it on your counter. And suddenly now you are able to accept Bitcoin. This is a huge step in this whole process. So that's basically Bankymoon. We also do a lot of other things. We advise companies and banks and how to actually use blockchain, but these are our products that we are selling today, and hopefully that you'll adopt soon enough. And that's Bankymoon. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Actually, quite impressive on the number of things that you're working on at the same time. Maybe you can just give us a bit more hints on Sendbe.
Sure.
And the traction you're making on that.
Okay, so we haven't released it yet, but we've got it in a pilot study. We've got a few users on it. But we're hoping to release it maybe before Christmas, but as these things go, probably after Christmas. And we do think it's going to be a viral thing because, if somebody here in South Africa has Sendbe and they want to send money to Zim, Zim is a big market that we are attacking. And, as soon as you tell anybody about Bitcoin in Zim, they embrace it. So we think it'll be a viral product in the same way WhatsApp was viral.
Yeah, I'm interested in your advisory part. In terms of applicability of Bitcoin and blockchain and this kind of technology on the continent, where do you see like really cool trends or industries that could be changed in future apart from what you've shown us today?
Yeah, so blockchain is one of those things, there's a lot of hyperbole in the market right now. Blockchain will change everything. That's Goldman Sachs, and it's going to become the beating heart of the financial industry. That's the World Economic Forum. So obviously finance is a big thing. If we can replace the kind of cross-border remittance, interbank settlement, that sort of thing, then I think there's a lot of interest in banks in that. But there's other use cases as well. I was in fact at this morning presenting at Straits Blockchain Summit. They want to put securities onto a blockchain, so you can issue a share on a blockchain and then it can be traded in peer-to-peer way. But there's so many other use cases. It can be replace letters of credit and bills of lading in trade finance. It can become your identity, so you can now, instead of having to submit your KYC information to everybody who wants it, you can have it on a blockchain and then allow people to access it. There's the legal industry, because now we can have this thing called the smart contract, which is this contract provisions coded on a blockchain. So there's just so many different use cases, but I do think that there's a hype cycle right now, and I think we're at the crest of that. And I think what's going to happen is a lot of this investment, although it's worthwhile, we're going to find out that blockchain isn't something that can just be switched into an existing business model. I think it's going to create new business models in the same way the internet didn't just make existing businesses better. It created new kinds of businesses, social media and e-commerce. So I think blockchain is going to be like that. It's going to surprise us, and it's not going to have the same impact that we expect.
Questions?
Thanks. You mentioned identity and KYC and all of that. With a product like Sendbe, are customers required to FICA themselves?
No, they're not, because it's Bitcoin. I was invited to the SRARB, the South African Reserve Bank, last week, and I presented this. And it's Bitcoin. And they don't know what to do with it yet. The thing is, what I'm doing, I'm not accepting money and converting money into Bitcoin like an exchange, and they regulate exchanges. I'm paying retailers, and that's fine because I know those retailers. retailers. But in Bitcoin land right now, and this is going to be years to come. If it's Bitcoin, it's pixie dust at this stage. So not to say that we must disregard regulation. Of course, that's important. But as I said, it's going to be years, and this is from their own mouths. This is what I discussed with them.
So a question from my side. First of all, cool name for your company.
Thank
It
you.
really stands out, Bankymoon. It's pretty cool. In terms of getting, once again, that market traction, I mean, it's a great product that sounds great. It's going to solve lots of problems. It probably is, pixie dust to everyone. But what is your strategy to make sure that you get your numbers up? Because that's going to be the make or break of the solution.
Yes, obviously when you're trying to do this, it's difficult, but we do think that it has a viral nature in the same way WhatsApp does. I think, if somebody has it here and they want to send money to somebody else, I think, there's going to be a compelling thing for that. And I think in the same way WhatsApp was like that, I think this will be like that. But obviously, we're going to have to consider, a marketing effort. I think having a Sent-B QR code at a retailer is a big deal. Also, our fees are much lower. We can charge 1%, which is basically the exchange fee. We're hoping to actually eventually create our own exchange, so we don't have to pay the fee, and we can make it a feeless exchange, so we just earn fees on the retail transactions and the electricity transactions and the airtime transactions. But I think that rollout is going to be an important thing to getting it visible and making people aware of it. And it's compelling for the retailer to only pay 1% transaction fee. That's a big deal.
Perfect. Tell me more about the prepaid meters, because I think that there's some difference that you make in charity, where I've seen a lot of Bitcoin investment going towards that, and that being a major use case. Tell us more. What kind of traction are you making there?
Yeah,
And
well,
are there other schools coming through?
Funny enough, I actually have been in discussions with Abe because he thinks it's a good combination with the solar panels. You need to be able to meter that, and a Bitcoin meter is a good combination. So that's a cool thing with us. But at this stage, there's a lot of money for prepaid vendors. When they're accepting money for prepaid electricity, they can be between 10 and 15% of a transaction fee on a prepaid vending transaction. So prepaid vendors aren't that keen on this whole idea. They feel like if this gains traction, eventually that can eat into a profitable sector. So we thought that there would be a demand for it. At least at this stage, when people start using Bitcoin more and more, I'm sure demand will grow. But at this stage, it's not really commercially viable, and that's why we decided to put our energy into the crowdfunding platform. By the way, there's been so much response, because people around the world, would love to donate to Africa. We have found, I've been invited to many conferences and had spoken at, been on CNBC and Russia Today. They all like this idea of being able to fund that cause directly without going through that organization. So that at least has got a lot of interest. And by the way, if anybody would like to support that project, I do need some support. It's a very cool thing, savings, helping schools, they can earn money, pay their electricity bills. Mweni has 800,000 Rand that they owe on their electricity bill, and that's a huge burden for them. So if this can somehow, make that better, we're doing a good deed, education and that. So if you'd like to support, please let me know.